That evening, the rain poured down, wrapping the city in a silver mist. Cars crawled along, their headlights piercing the fog, while people scurried under umbrellas, desperate to escape the biting cold. In the midst of this chaos, a young man named Daniel pedaled his old delivery bike through the slick, busy streets. His jacket was soaked through, his hands numb, but not a single complaint escaped his lips. This was his last delivery of the day, and then finally he could go home. Daniel was a simple man. He didn't own much, no fancy car, no designer clothes, not even what you'd call a proper house. But he possessed something far more valuable: a kind heart. He never hesitated to help others, even when life dealt him a rough hand. His mother's words echoed in his mind every single day. "Kindness is not a weakness, my son. It's what makes you human." As Daniel was crossing the old bridge, a strange flicker of light caught his eye. He first thought it was lightning, but then he saw it. A car had smashed into the railing up ahead. Smoke billowed from the engine, and angry sparks spat out from beneath the hood. He slammed on his brakes, skidding to a halt. Inside the wrecked car, a woman was trapped. She was pounding on the window with frantic hands, her cries for help muffled by the glass. "Help me, please," she screamed, her voice filled with terror. Without a second thought, Daniel dropped his bike and sprinted towards her. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke. The rain hissed as it met the burning metal of the car. He yanked on the door handle, but it was jammed shut. Through the window, he could see the woman's face, pale and streaked with tears, her eyes wide with fear. The seatbelt was twisted around her arm, pinning her in place. Daniel shouted, "Cover your face!" He tore off his drenched jacket, wrapped it around his arm, and grabbing a rock from the roadside, he smashed the side window. Glass exploded everywhere. Flames began to creep up from under the car, starting to lick the edges of her seat. He reached in, slicing his hand on the jagged glass, but he didn't feel the pain. He fumbled with the seatbelt buckle until it finally released, and then he pulled her out with every ounce of strength he had. She collapsed against him, coughing violently, her breath coming in ragged, shaky gasps. "Can you walk?" he asked urgently. She managed a weak nod, her legs trembling beneath her. Daniel supported her as they stumbled away from the wreck. Just seconds later, a deafening explosion ripped through the night. The car erupted into a massive fireball, sending a shower of sparks into the rainy sky. They both hit the ground, gasping for air. Daniel's arm was bleeding freely now, but he barely noticed. He looked at the woman beside him. She was alive. That was all that mattered. "You're safe now," he said softly. The woman stared at him, her lips trembling. You saved me," she whispered, her voice weak but overflowing with emotion. Daniel offered a small, tired smile. Anyone would have done the same. But they both knew that wasn't true. Most people would have kept their distance, frozen by fear. Daniel hadn't even hesitated. The rain began to wash the soot from his face as the distant wail of sirens grew closer. The sound of an approaching ambulance echoed across the bridge. Daniel helped her to her feet. "You're going to be okay," he reassured her. Still shaking, she looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "What's your name?" she asked. "Daniel," he replied. "Just Daniel." "Daniel," she repeated softly, as if committing it to memory. "Thank you." When the paramedics arrived, they rushed to the woman, wrapping her in a warm blanket and tending to her injuries. One of them motioned for Daniel to come to the ambulance as well, but he just shook his head. "She needs it more than me." As they led her away, the woman turned, trying to stop him. "Wait, please, I want to thank you properly." Daniel just smiled again, a weary but gentle expression. "You already did." He gave her a final, small nod and walked back to his old bike. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but his clothes were still dripping. He climbed on, the light from the burning car glinting in his eyes. He didn't see the news reporters arriving, cameras flashing. He didn't see the police cordoning off the area. He didn't even notice the luxury emblem on the car he'd just pulled her from. To him, she was simply a person in danger. Nothing more, nothing less. As Daniel pedaled away, disappearing into the rainy night, the woman sat in the back of the ambulance watching him go. She couldn't take her eyes off the stranger who had risked everything to save her. A paramedic asked gently, Do you know him? She shook her head slowly. No, but I'll never forget him. Later that night, the hospital staff found her ID, and the story took a stunning turn. She was the daughter of Edward Harrington, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the city. The news exploded with headlines calling it "The Miracle on the Bridge." But the hero of the story remained a mystery. He had vanished before anyone could even ask his name. Back in his small, humble apartment, Daniel felt a quiet sense of peace settle over him. He had no idea who the woman was. He didn't care about her family name or her fortune. All he knew was that someone was alive tonight because he chose to act when others might not have. He sat by his window, watching the city lights shimmer through the drizzle. Somewhere out there, the woman he saved was safe in a warm hospital bed. That thought was enough. It made him smile. He whispered to himself, maybe the world still has some good left in it. And in that quiet, solitary moment, Daniel had no idea that this simple act of courage was about to change his life forever. Because sometimes, one selfless choice, one moment of pure bravery, can connect two lives that were never meant to meet. And fate, silent and unseen, was already weaving the next chapter of their incredible story. 2 days after the crash, the city had already forgotten. The rain had washed away the oil stains and traffic flowed as usual. But for Daniel, the memory was as fresh as the scratches on his hands. He was back on his delivery route, pedaling through the same streets, his body aching from pulling a stranger from a burning car. He didn't mind the pain. It was a reminder that she was alive. At least he hoped she was. His friend Ravi was buzzing at the corner shop, waving a newspaper. "Hey man, did you see this? Some big shot's daughter almost died in a car fire. A mystery hero saved her." Daniel just offered a faint smile. "Yeah, I heard." Ravi pressed on. "You think the guy will ever come forward? He'd be famous." Daniel just shrugged. "He doesn't need to." He hadn't done it for the applause. He'd done it because a person needed help. Simple as that. Later that afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up beside his bike. The window glided down. A man in a crisp suit looked at him. "Are you Daniel?" Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Yes. Why?" The man gave a slight, knowing smile. "Mr. Harrington would like to see you." Daniel was confused. "Who's Mr. Harrington?" The man simply handed him a card with an address embossed in gold. Harrington Industries Tower. Curiosity got the better of him. After his shift, he cycled to the address. The building was a giant of glass and steel reflecting the sky. He felt tiny, out of place in his worn clothes and with his delivery bag. The security guards eyed him suspiciously, but the moment he showed them the card, their posture straightened. "Right this way, sir," one said, his tone shifting to pure respect. He was led through a lobby that felt like another world, gleaming marble, soft lights, and quiet, elegant music. An elevator whisked him silently to the top floor. When the doors opened, his breath caught. There she was, the woman from the crash. She stood by a massive window, her arm in a sling, her eyes brighter than he remembered. A moment of silence passed between them before she smiled. "It's you," she said, her voice soft. "The man who saved my life." Daniel managed to find his voice. You look better." She nodded, her smile warm. "Thanks to you." Just then, a deeper voice cut in. "So you're the young man who pulled my daughter from that wreck." Daniel turned. Behind a large desk stood Edward Harrington, the billionaire whose face was known throughout the city. His presence was powerful, yet his eyes were kind. "Yes, sir," Daniel said quietly. "I just did what anyone would do." Mr. Harrington walked closer, studying him. "No, son. Most people would have filmed it. You ran into a fire for a stranger. That's not what anyone would do." Daniel just stood there, unsure how to respond to the praise. Harrington gestured to a chair. "Sit down. We owe you more than just words." The woman stepped forward. "I never even got your name." "It's Daniel. Just Daniel." She laughed, a light, beautiful sound. "Well, Daniel, I'm Emily Harrington. We've been looking for you for 2 days. Daniel looked genuinely surprised. You didn't need to do that. Yes, we did, she said firmly. You saved my life. You deserve to be thanked. Mr. Harrington slid an envelope across the desk. Inside is a check. It's not charity, it's gratitude. And I'd like to offer you a job. A man with your courage shouldn't be delivering packages. Daniel stared at the envelope, speechless. Sir, I don't need money. I'm just glad she's okay. Harrington nodded slowly, impressed. Then take the job. It's meaningful work. Security for my foundation, helping people. Daniel hesitated, overwhelmed. Then Emily spoke quietly, her voice full of emotion. Please, if you refuse, it will feel like my life wasn't worth saving. He looked into her eyes, saw the sincerity, and finally smiled. All right, I'll try. A few weeks later, Daniel's life was completely different. The work was challenging, but for the first time, he felt truly valued. He wasn't just another face in the crowd anymore. Emily visited the foundation often. She'd bring him coffee and gently tease him about his humility. An unlikely friendship blossomed, built on a moment of fire and rain. They talked for hours, sharing their completely different worlds, yet finding a deep understanding. One evening, as they watched the sunset paint the city gold, she said softly, You know, when you saved me, I thought you were crazy. Now I think you were just profoundly human. Daniel laughed. Maybe a little of both. They stood there, two people from different worlds, their lives forever connected. Daniel had started that night with nothing but a bike and a delivery bag, but his simple act of courage had given him everything that mattered, a purpose, a friendship that felt like family, and a place in a world that had never seen him before. Sometimes he'd pass the bridge where it all happened. The scorch marks were gone, the railing repaired, but he would always remember the heat, the fear, and the quiet relief in her voice. And in those moments, he'd smile to himself. Because maybe that's what it's all about. Doing the right thing not for the reward or the recognition, but simply because it's the right thing to do. The months after the accident changed Daniel's life completely. He had never imagined his small act of courage would open a door to a world he didn't belong to, a world of power, luxury, and influence. He now worked for Mr. Harrington's foundation, the same man whose daughter, Emily, he had saved that night on the bridge. His job wasn't glamorous. He managed supplies and organized relief work, but for Daniel, it was more than just a job. It was a second chance. He often wondered why Mr. Harrington trusted him so much. A poor delivery boy in a millionaire's office? It was like something out of a story. But every time Daniel tried to thank him, Mr. Harrington would just smile and say, Don't thank me, son. You earned this the night you chose someone else's life over your own. Still, Daniel never felt fully comfortable. He wore the same old shoes, took the same bus, and lived in a small apartment far from the city's shining towers. He never wanted to change who he was. He only wanted to be useful. But Emily saw something more in him. She often visited the foundation, and every time she saw Daniel working late or quietly fixing things in a corner, something in her heart softened. One afternoon, while everyone was leaving, she noticed him still at the records desk. You never stop, do you? She said, smiling. He looked up, surprised. Just making sure tomorrow runs smoothly. You're impossible, she said, laughing softly. Then her tone changed. You know, I've met hundreds of people, businessmen, celebrities, politicians, but I've never met someone like you. Daniel frowned. Like me? She nodded. Someone who does good without wanting to be seen. Someone who doesn't ask for anything in return. He looked away, embarrassed. I'm not special, Emily. I just do what feels right. She studied him for a moment. That's exactly what makes you special. For a few seconds, a warm, quiet silence filled the room. Both of them felt something they couldn't name, something new but very real. From that day on, their friendship grew. They talked more about life, dreams, and things money couldn't buy. Emily told him how empty wealth could feel, how people only surrounded her because of her last name. Daniel listened quietly, never judging, always understanding. Sometimes they met outside the office and in simple cafes at the park or near the bridge where fate had first brought them together. She liked how he made her laugh, how he saw the world through such honest eyes. But not everyone liked their friendship. One evening, a business partner whispered loudly enough for Daniel to hear, "Why is that delivery boy always around your daughter?" Mr. Harrington frowned but didn't respond. Later that night, Daniel thought about leaving. He didn't want to cause trouble. When Emily found out, she was furious. "You can't just disappear," she said. "You belong here." "I don't," he replied quietly. "I don't fit in this world." She shook her head. "You fit in my world, Daniel." Her words froze him. Before either of them could speak again, Mr. Harrington entered the room. His face was serious, but his eyes were calm. "I heard what people are saying," he said, "and I also know what's true." Daniel stood nervously. "Sir, I never—" Harrington raised a hand. "I know, son. You've done nothing wrong. The world always questions what it can't understand. Let them." Emily smiled in relief, and Daniel felt the heavy weight lift from his chest. After that day, things slowly changed. Mr. Harrington began involving Daniel in more projects, letting him travel to small towns to deliver aid and build schools. Daniel discovered how much he loved helping people, how giving back gave his life meaning, and each time he returned, Emily would be waiting. She'd ask about the people he helped, the children he met, and Daniel would tell her stories that made her eyes shine. One night, after months of working together, Emily said quietly, "Do you ever think about that night on the bridge?" Daniel smiled. "Every time it rains." She laughed softly. "So do I." He looked at her, his voice low. "That night I thought I was saving a stranger, but maybe I was saving myself." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" He looked out the window, his eyes full of quiet truth. "You showed me that kindness isn't weakness. It's purpose. And maybe that's what I was missing all along." Outside, the city lights reflected in the glass, soft and golden. The world that once felt so distant to Daniel now seemed closer, warmer, and though he still rode the bus and lived simply, he carried something far richer than wealth: gratitude, love, and the knowledge that one act of courage can change not just one life, but two. Because sometimes, a single choice made in the rain can lead to forever.